The day Nelson's mother died, the sky should have shattered, should have bled, should have screamed, should have torn itself apart and rained fire on the village until everyone understood that something irreplaceable had just been stolen from the world. But it didn't. It just stood there, blue and perfect, mocking, like nothing important had happened at all. And that's what broke Nelson. The indifferent, beautiful, heartless sky. This is True Tales by Jaden. Subscribe, because the stories you're about to hear actually happened. Nelson was 11 years old that morning. 11 years of waking to his mother's humming, that low, constant sound that meant safety, that meant home, that meant someone in this world loved him without conditions. 11 years of her hands braiding his hair too tight because it had to last the whole week. 11 years of her voice calling him my son in a way that made him feel like he mattered. And now she was gone. Nobody had warned him. Nobody had sat him down and said his mother was dying. Nobody told him to say the things he needed to say before it was too late. She'd been coughing for weeks, deep rattling coughs that sounded like something inside her chest was breaking piece by piece. At night, when the compound was silent, Nelson would sit beside her mat in the darkness, rubbing slow circles on her back the way she used to do for him when he ate too many mangoes and got belly pain. He didn't know if it helped, didn't know if his 11-year-old hands were too small, too weak, too late. But he did it anyway. Nelson would whisper into the dark, his voice shaking even though he tried to sound brave. He'd tell her not to die, he'd beg her to stay. And she would always turn her head just enough to look at him with those tired eyes and smile. Even when smiling looked like it cost her something, even when her lips were cracked and her skin was pulling tight over her bones, she would smile. She'd tell him she wasn't going anywhere. She'd call him my son one more time. And Nelson believed her. Because mothers don't lie, and mothers aren't supposed to leave. That morning, he woke to silence. Not the good kind, the wrong kind. The heavy, suffocating kind that presses on your chest and makes breathing feel like work. Nelson sat up on his mat, blinking in the dim light creeping through cracks in the wooden walls. Something was wrong. His stomach knew before his mind did, that tight twisting feeling that starts in your belly and climbs into your throat. The firewood in the corner was untouched. The pot she always washed first thing in the morning still sat there with yesterday's food crusted on the sides. And the humming was gone. Every single morning for as long as Nelson could remember, his mother hummed while she worked. Sweeping, washing, cooking, it didn't matter. She hummed like the river behind the village, constant and steady. Now there was only silence. Nelson called out. His voice sounded strange, too loud and too small at the same time. No answer. He stood slowly, bare feet touching the cold floor, dust floated in the morning light. He could hear his own breathing. He could hear chickens waking outside. He could hear someone's goat bleating far away. But nothing from his mother. He called again, louder this time, walking toward her mat in the corner. She was lying there, still, too still. Her wrapper pulled up to her shoulders, hands resting on her stomach, eyes open just a crack but staring at nothing. Her lips were gray, her chest wasn't moving. Nelson's heart started pounding so loud he thought maybe she could hear it. Maybe it would wake her up. He reached out with one trembling hand and touched her shoulder. It was cold, not blanket cold, dead cold. The kind of cold that doesn't belong to living things. He shook her gently, then harder, then desperately, his voice breaking as he called her name over and over. She didn't wake up. Fear grabbed him by the throat, raw and sharp and unfamiliar. Nelson screamed and ran out of the room, out of the house, into the compound where morning light was turning the sky pink and orange. He screamed for help. He screamed her name. He couldn't finish the sentence because if he said the word, it would be real. The adults came running. Stephanie emerged from the second house, the one Nelson's father had built for her when he married her few years ago. She walked slowly, arms folded, face unreadable. When she reached the doorway and looked at Rebecca's body, she just stared. Not crying, not gasping, not falling to her knees like people do in stories. Just staring, like she was looking at a broken pot. Something inconvenient but not surprising. Mr. Jude came running moments later, eyes swollen with sleep. When he saw Rebecca, he made a sound Nelson had never heard before, somewhere between a scream and a sob and a prayer. He fell to his knees, crawling toward her, grabbing her hand, pressing it to his face, shaking his head over and over like he could refuse what was happening. He whispered her name, his voice cracking into pieces.
And then the wailing started. Women poured in from other compounds.
Neighbors, relatives, filling the room with cries and prayers and hands raised to the sky asking God why. Someone covered Rebecca's body with white cloth. Someone else dragged Nelson outside even though he wanted to stay. They sat him under the mango tree and left him there alone. Nelson sat with knees pulled to chest, arms wrapped around them, rocking slightly. He wasn't crying anymore, couldn't cry anymore. Something inside had just stopped, like a light flickering out. He stared at the ground, at ants crawling toward a cassava peel, at the way morning sun made everything look bright and normal and alive. And he thought, how can the world keep moving when she's gone? Inside, the wailing continued. Stephanie's voice wasn't among them. When Nelson looked up, he saw her standing in the doorway, watching everything with calm, calculating eyes. She caught him looking, and for just a second, just a flicker, Nelson saw something in her face that made his stomach twist. Not sadness, not shock. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. But then she turned away, and the moment was gone, and Nelson told himself he must have imagined it. Rebecca was buried before sunset. No ceremony, no long prayers, no coffin of good wood with metal handles like they used for chiefs. Just her body wrapped in white cloth. Just a hole dug quickly by men who wanted to finish before dark. Just earth and a few rushed words from the village elder. Nelson stood beside the grave, father on one side, Stephanie on the other. Franklin, Stephanie's son, stood close to his mother. He was only 9, his mother wasn't the one in the ground. Nelson watched them lower her body, watched the first handful of dirt hit white cloth, watched more dirt follow, covering her slowly, piece by piece, until he couldn't see her anymore. He wanted to scream, wanted to jump in and pull her out and tell everyone they were making a mistake. But his throat was closed, his voice was gone. All he could do was stand there, clutching his torn shirt so hard his knuckles turned white, watching the woman who'd been his entire world disappear under the earth. When it was over, people left quickly, quietly, like they were embarrassed or afraid or just tired of pretending to care. Mr. Jude stood staring at the dirt mound, shoulders shaking. Stephanie stood beside him, hand on his arm, whispering something Nelson couldn't hear. Then she turned to Nelson and told him to come. There was nothing more to see here. Nelson didn't move. She said it again, sharper, slowly, like his legs didn't want to obey. Nelson followed her back. He didn't look back. Couldn't, because looking back would make it real. That night, the house felt different. Walls closer, air heavier, silence like it had weight, pressing down on everything. Nelson sat in the corner, back against the wall, knees to chest. His body knew what to do when his mind didn't. He could hear Stephanie in the kitchen, pots clanging, water pouring, Franklin's voice asking soft questions about what happened, where Auntie Rebecca went, why everyone was crying. Stephanie's answers were short. Rebecca clipped, like she didn't want to waste words. When his father came home, late, smelling like palm wine, eyes red, food was served. 3 plates. 1 for Mr. Jude, 1 for Stephanie, 1 for Franklin. Nelson watched from his corner and waited. His stomach made noises, tight cramping that reminded him he hadn't eaten since yesterday. When everyone was eating, Nelson stood and walked toward the pot near the fire where extra food was usually kept. His mother always made sure there was extra. Always made sure he wouldn't go hungry even if she had to eat less. But his mother wasn't here anymore. His hand reached for the pot. Stephanie's voice cut like a blade, telling him to leave that. It was for Franklin. He was still growing, he needed more food. Mr. Jude swallowed and said that Nelson hadn't eaten. Stephanie said calmly that he already ate earlier when she wasn't looking. He could wait until tomorrow. A big lie, and Nelson knew it. His father knew it too. Even Franklin seemed to know something was wrong because he stopped eating and looked at his mother with big, uncertain eyes. But nobody said anything, nobody corrected her, nobody stood up and said it wasn't true. The silence stretched. Nelson's hand dropped to his side. He walked back to his corner, sat down, pulled his knees to his chest and stared at the walls. His stomach cramped and twisted and made sounds too loud in the quiet room. But he didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't ask. Because somewhere deep inside, in a place just beginning to form, Nelson was learning something. That survival sometimes means silence. That asking for things makes them disappear faster. That hunger has many faces. And tonight, he was meeting one of them. That night, Nelson didn't sleep. He lay on his mat, thinner now, rougher, because the good mat had been his mother's and someone had already taken it, staring at the ceiling. Everything hurt. He thought about his mother's smile, the way she woke him by tickling his feet, the way she hummed while working, the way she called him my son like it was the most important title in the world. He thought about the last thing she said, "I am not going anywhere." And he wondered if she'd known she was lying, or if she'd believed it too. Outside, the night was alive. Crickets, frogs, distant drumming. Probably a celebration somewhere. People who didn't know Nelson's world had ended today. He pulled his thin wrapper tighter even though it wasn't cold, and whispered into darkness, "Mama, I'm hungry." Nobody answered, nobody heard. And in the other room, Stephanie lay beside Mr. Jude, staring at the ceiling, her mind already working. Already planning. Already deciding what kind of life Nelson would have now that the only person who loved him was gone. The night Rebecca died, two paths were set in motion. One led to survival, the other led to something darker. Nelson didn't know it yet, but hunger was about to become his teacher. And Stephanie? She was about to become his nightmare. What do you think happens when a child loses their only protector? Can you survive when the people who should care for you want you to disappear? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know where you're watching from as we continue this story.